Hi, good morning. This is Mike. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Everyone who was doing the past webinars, we appreciate you coming back. And everyone who is joining us for the first time, welcome. Today we're going to get into a little bit deeper dive into the build process, the design, the customization of the boats. So as I mentioned, I'm Mike Schlichtig, the General Manager of Outer Reef Yachts and also part of the sales team. So today, as we said, we're going to talk a little bit about the design process. Just to give a quick recap of the last couple of seminars, we spoke about how Outer Reef is really a semi-custom boat. We're a long-range, offshore, safe, secure cruising vessel. We're geared towards the owner-operator, and we really strive to build your version of your boat, not our version of the boat. So joining us again today, we have Jeff Druick, who is the president of Outer Reef Yachts, Danny Stovall, who is our logistics manager, and Deborah Dorn, who is our decor, in-house decor person. So Jeff, let's kind of kick things off with you. Once customers have decided that Outer Reef is the proper build and so forth for them, and they've gone through the process and they decide that we're who they want to work with. Can you give us an idea of how that process works and how that communication and kind of segues into the final process?
Yeah, sure, Mike. Once we have a contract finalized, we set an appointment with the clients to come into our office and sit down and do a one-on-one or one-on-two, depending on husband and wife or whatever, design session, which is basically a um, which is basically a recap of their contract. And within the contract, we go through specifications, maybe some of the options that they've chosen, and we generate a preliminary drawing based on that contract. And then when we get into the design session, as you see a little display of one of our design sessions here, we actually go real time and dig right into the meat of the boat and actually start designing CAD drawing in real time for them. In the illustration you see here, you'll see a number of lines and notations on these drawings. This is specifically what happens during a design session, whereas in particular, everything you see that's in color on this drawing are specifics that were taken throughout the design session, draw in real time for the client, and generate these drawings. And once we're finished with these preliminary drawings from design session, we delve then into the finite details of the design, like you would see up in this slide here. We'll go into sections within the boat, drawing specific details and very detailed options of that they've chosen. Um, and at that point, then we go into construction.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Once we've kind of done the CAD design sessions and all of those things are finalized and all of the communications between the sales team, between Deborah and Danny have all been completed, can you give an idea of what some of the build milestones are for each boat?
Depending on the boat, they're pretty much all the same, Mike. We go through a process of construction, which is not unlike most boats that are built today, varying on techniques of construction. But typically, you'll start with a preparing of a mold. In this case, I believe this may be a 65 or a 70 footer that we're waxing the mold and preparing it. From there, we go right into spraying gel coat and starting the lamination process after gel coat. Once we're all laminated up, she'll release from the mold, as you can see in this photo here. This is a prima mantis occasion the day she comes out of the mold. And as you can see, it's a split mold, so it's a monolithic lamination, of course. And then she'll go into this cradle that is built specifically for the vessel, and our boats stay in that cradle until they're splashed for their first time down the road in the construction process. One of the reasons for living in this cradle is it keeps the boat true and straight, and everything is built into the boat in this true format of construction. This happens to be just another shot in the construction process with lowering some engines down into the hull. Obviously, this is a time lapse up quick of what goes on in the process. And then here she is ready to launch, ready to ship, actually. She's sitting in her cradle again, and she will ship to whatever her destination is, sitting in that cradle. And the cradle is actually used to load and offload the boat. So that's pretty much a fast track of the construction process. Obviously, there's a lot more detail within that, but that's pretty much it.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. One of the questions that we get all the time at the boat shows when we're showing various people through the vessels, the big question is just how customized can Outer Reef build a boat? Are we talking about a few little pieces here and there, or are there some pretty substantial modifications and customizations? Since we're not at a boat show, can you run through maybe some examples of how we've really redrawn some boats in the past?
Yeah, sure, Mike. Yeah, sure. Well, our boats typically, our classic design is a typical salon aft, galley midships, pilot house forward design, which we've been building for almost 20 years now, this typical design. And I'm going to show you an example of a boat. Well, here's a typical, this is a 70, I think, as an example. Saloon aft, pilot house forward. About a year ago, we had a client in Europe that was specifically looking for something completely different, wanted more of an alfresco style boat, wanted to break the norm, so to speak, in design. And we went forward and completely broke out of our norms as far as the design. And this is what we create. Well, this is a typical flybridge of our classic. I'm illustrating this because to see what we've done even in the flybridge changes. And this is a 640 Azure designed for this European client, which is a complete departure of our traditional design. This happens to be a galley aft with a complete disappearing wall that opens up to the aft deck. There's a shot looking forward, and this has got a midship saloon and an abbreviated pilot station to starboard with a seating area to port. A complete departure of what our classic design is. Again, here's another shot of it looking aft, wide open, completely different in design, much more contemporary. Again, this is what the client requested, and with that request, we went right to it and completely redesigned the boat. And again, here's the flybridge. If you remember the previous photo of our classic flybridge, here we created sort of a pod station with a walkout onto the flybridge. They wanted to stress a lot of time on outdoor living and sunning space, so we created this. We call it the bridge view deck. We can walk right around the console now and sit forward of the steering station up on the flybridge. So this is a real example of a complete opposite look at what we can design and do. And again, this was driven specifically by the client that had this idea of a cruising lifestyle for the Mediterranean with a classic style boat.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Guys, this is an interactive, and ladies, meant to be an interactive webinar. So please, if you have any questions, there should be a little question box on your screen. And if you type them in, we'll do our best to get to those. I do have a question for you, Jeff, from a gentleman named Sean, and he's asking, why is it that Outer Reef is able to do kind of these massive customizations when it seems like most of the other competitors in our market don't really do them?
Sure. Thanks for the question, Sean. Why do we do it? Well, the whole genesis of Outer Reef Yachts was built around a custom designed yacht. It was one of the reasons I got into the business was to be able to provide such a custom designed boat when no one was offering at the time. And with our business model of being completely vertically integrated with no dealer networks, we can completely control the build process, which gives us that flexibility. Again, this is about building the boat for you, not what we offer as a standard boat. And I think this has been the hallmark of Outer Reef Yachts over all these years to provide what people are really looking for, not necessarily what the norm is.
Great. All right. Thank you. And thanks for the question. Keep them coming. Deborah, as we talked about last week, there's a big intersection between what we call hardscape and softscape, where the build designs from equipment and physical layouts and things really intersect with the decor side of things. So once a client has worked with the sales team and they've sat down and we've spoken with Jeff and Danny as well, going over these things, can you give us a little idea of how you apply your expertise to continue that build process?
Absolutely. However, I do have to give a little shout out to Jack and Vanessa, who I had the pleasure of meeting yesterday on our newly delivered 610. And it's my understanding that they're joining us today. So hi, Jack and Vanessa. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to type in that little box while we're all here live. And then Mike, to answer your question, yes, absolutely. When I'm sitting down with a new build client, I apply my in-depth knowledge of our building practices and our build materials. And I take that in conjunction with an in-depth review of what they have selected at time of contract as far as the options on the selection sheet. And those tools enable me then to ask the pertinent questions, which in turn allow me to get a really clear picture of how these spaces need to work for this particular client, whether we're on the interior or the exterior. So I'm going to dive right into that right now and share some visuals to explain that a little bit better. Just bear with me, everybody. Thank you for your patience. So to illustrate how all of this unfolds, what you're going to see here is an often chosen item from our selection sheet, which is a colored non-skid. Here we see it in a gray, and as we click through this, you'll see that here it is in a beige. You wouldn't think that this item on a selection sheet would have a broader picture to it, but it actually does. This particular material segues directly into what we will select for our exterior upholsteries. If we run stone on the outside, our skid chair upholsteries and what have you. And then we spend time working on additional selections when it comes to all the beautiful woodwork that our carpentry shop produces. So another customization aspect to this, Mike, is our wood details, whether we are using an exotic wood or just a special inlay material, as you can see here. When we do beautiful compass roses or horizontal grain detail. And of course, all of these things are hand selected by the owners with a visual review and samples that we physically have on hand. We then in turn allocate time to go over what we offer as our standard products for whether it's a plumbing fixture or a lighting fixture. And should an owner want a designer option, like you're seeing here with these beautiful vessel sinks, then we will depart from the office and venture to local showrooms so that these owners can then continue to hand select the items that they want on their yacht to help achieve their overall desired aesthetic.
Great, thanks, Deborah. And I know when we've done design sessions together, we rely on a lot of visuals. We have a whole library of our past boats, a lot of ideas from past owners. So all of those things really tend to play into your process and ours in general, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, yes. Mike, as you know, you and I have worked on several builds, and you always sit in and, from all of our respective points, this is where, we keep illustrating the fact that we all work together. There's complete cohesion through all departments to really just build what they're dreaming of.
Great, thanks. We have a question from Brett, and Brett has been with us in the past. And his question, and Brett, I wanted to get to you since you had a couple here. I know in one of the last webinars you had asked us about average length of ownership, and we had mentioned that resale time in the market is roughly 8 months. So that 8 month, by the way, is kind of an average in an industry, 8 to 12. We had a 73 go on the market, and after actively being on the market for about 4 weeks, it went under contract. So we definitely do a little bit better than the average on time on the market. Average length of ownership, it really depends on personal circumstances. Hull number 1 of our 65 series is going on 15 years of owning his boat. They still cruise on it all the time. I would think if we took a look at it, we're probably somewhere in the 4-year, maybe 5-year average before people decide that it's time for some sort of change. Most of the time, it's family oriented, and a good portion of the time, we also get people who are just moving up to a different size. Their cruising needs have changed, and we've had multiple owners who have built multiple boats with us. So hopefully that answers your question on that one. We'll get to your next question in just a minute there, though, Brett. Danny, I wanted to switch over to you. So as the logistics manager, you have really been involved in this process from almost day one. You've worked with the sales team on coordinating the selections that we have to offer. You have worked with Jeff on doing CADs. You work with Deborah on coordinating various things with the shipyard and with the clients. So as the logistics manager, can you give us some insight into how you handle the entire build process, working alongside the sales team, Jeff, Deborah, and of course our shipyard?
Sure, Mike. Any inquiries or modifications, whether it be equipment, carpentry changes, material changes, they're all typically initiated post-contract directly through the client or with discussions with Deborah or the salesperson themselves. What we try and do is we try and gather as much information and get the best idea of what the client is in particular looking for. This may just be a quick conversation or an email, or maybe a little bit more in depth, really depending on how complex the change may be. So we gather all that information, and as you can imagine, communication is critical. We have to make sure that the client is getting exactly what they want, and that the shipyard is also on board with what the client expects. Any and all requests all filter through me. So again, whether it be directly from Jeff, the salesperson, or Deborah, everything goes directly through me and as a central hub, so to speak. And then I will distribute that information to all the parties involved. There's a lot of tracking involved. There's materials that need to be ordered, and it's in some cases it could be a process behind the scenes. But again, we want to ensure that the client is getting exactly what they want. Once all the information is gathered, we send a design request over to the client. The client executes it, and then we send it off to the shipyard to put into play.
Yeah, I have a tendency to tell people when we're at the boat show and we go through these, it's very easy to build stock boats and to keep doing the same thing over and over again. It's quite a bit of work to do what we do, and it really is impressive that the team that we have is organized and we can really go through this whole process and track everything and communicate with the shipyard and amongst ourselves. So it's a big task, and I know you do a great job with it. Danny, this is also for you, and this kind of goes back to your previous point. We obviously have to have quality control issues in space. We have to have inspection processes and things like that. Can you give us a quick little rundown on, we have all of the methods for communicating information. Now we need to make sure the plan as put out is implemented. Maybe you can share a little insight on that.
Yeah, Mike, what we have is we have what's called a QSI form. It's a Quality Standards Inspections form. And what basically goes on to that form is all the standard specifications, selections, and any conversations or anything that's as far as changes, carpentry and whatnot that was done for the vessel is all translated onto this document. And this document in some cases can be hundreds of items because it also includes typical inspections, whether that be for for equipment that was installed, making sure everything was exactly installed as per specifications and matches exactly what the client is looking for. This form is reviewed and updated on almost a daily basis during the construction process. And in addition to using this form at the shipyard, this form also is implemented during the commissioning process. So all the information that's gathered and put onto this form during the construction process, during the entire period from start to finish, is then utilized again and reused during the commissioning process by either Randy or any of those other service people that we have. So it's a form, it's a living form on Dropbox that we're constantly updating and making sure that everything's followed properly.
Yeah, and I know just from personal experience, I've made multiple trips over with clients. I think you're probably ready to have an apartment set up for the number of trips you've taken. And so we are very hands-on with our US team as well. Deborah, I have a question from Michael. He's asking, do exterior upholsteries have to be brought in when it's raining, or does the water shut off of them? Do they drain through the cushions? How does that work in terms of the fabric selections and what you would need to do for exterior fabrics?
All right, let's start with just a very basic premise there with the construction of exterior fabrics, which are solution dyed acrylic, and that will naturally repel water and even some basic stains. What I recommend is if you're going out to dinner and rain is in the forecast, I think it's fine to leave exterior out. When you are shutting down the boat for the season, then I would say perhaps bring them in or store them up underneath the brow just to help keep them clean and not have any issues. Our cushion construction does have a Weblon on the back of it, so the foam does aerate. But if you have anything trapped with moisture and no aeration, then that's where you can occasionally have a mold issue, but I don't see that being a prevalent problem.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the common selections we see anyway is we provide the opportunity to have exterior covers for everything anyway. So you do get a little bit of protection from those. Great. I think that answered his question. Jeff, I have a question from Peter for you. And this is a little more general, Jeff, but he's kind of looking at the stability differences between, say, our 610 and the 650. We're talking about, offshore, blue seas condition handling.
Mm-hmm. And the question is, Mike?
Oh, compare, how does the 61 compare to the 65 from a sea handling standpoint, assuming that, we're out and you find yourselves in some higher than normal seas, which our owners have because that's what the boats are for. But Peter's looking for a little insight comparing maybe the 61 to the 65.
Well, other than length overall, which the only difference that makes is into a head sea, all our boats are built to the same standards of unlimited ocean category A for stability offshore. So from a stability standpoint and a safety standpoint, there is no difference between a 58, a 61, a 65, an 80, or 86. They're all built to that same standard. And again, when it comes to size, and that's where you would see the difference as far as handling. You might be in a 15 or a 20-foot head sea, and it might be a little bit more comfortable ride in a 70 or an 80 as compared to a 61, but there are no differences in stability. As I said, that stability rating and center of gravities and all those things that give us those ratings are all very, very similar when it comes from a construction standpoint. So it's like anything else. We have a saying in the industry: there is no replacement for displacement. So obviously, the bigger and the heavier the boat, the nicer the ride. But from the standpoint of stability and safety, there is no difference between a 61 and an 80.
All right, great. And Peter, thank you for the question. Jeff, I'm going to field this question to you as well. This is from Brett, and Brett has been at several of our past webinars. And it's actually a great question. He's saying, over the years, technologies has improved. Has it been an obstacle in updating our boat for current technologies?
No, I mean, I pride ourselves on the fact that we're usually on the cutting edge of technologies when it comes to diesel propulsion and things of that nature. Um, there's not much that we can control with that, but there are a lot of other things that we upgrade in technology from an electronic standpoint, equipment. We usually install the latest and the greatest of equipment. As an example, a couple of years ago, we changed our whole shafting systems from a conventional shaft and strut system to what's called a C-torque system. That was a huge jump in technology for us in efficiency and vibration reduction, things of that nature. So we are constantly on the edge of technology, pushing the forefront of it. So we don't sit back on our laurels and just keep building status quo as far as equipment and things of that nature. We embrace whatever new technologies come along and try to incorporate them into all our builds.
Great. Okay. That was hopefully, Brett, that answered your question. Again, I want to apologize for a little bit of a late start. Really, we hope this gave everybody a much better idea as to the glimpse into the process, some of the lengths that we'll go for doing some customization, a little bit of the design process. We're going to run through, as we kind of wrap up here, our presentation. I've got a few photos and some things we'll scroll through because it will really be a great indication as to some of the visual examples of what we really do have to offer. Again, keep in mind that we do encourage questions, so as you're scrolling through the photos and if something comes up, just let me know and we'll give it an answer. So what we have on this photo is a construction process. Obviously, we have to start someplace. So this is a galley of an 86 cockpit motor yacht that we had built. This particular boat, these owners came to us and they were really more of a European interior owner, but they wanted the ruggedness, the ability to go all the way down in the Caribbean. But they asked us if we can do a more modern interior. I think when you look at this photo, you'll see that this was such a huge departure from anything you've seen from us in the past. This boat literally went from photorealistic renderings to what you see through the whole build process. So, I mean, this is really an amazing example of our in-house team and our shipyard and what they can really accomplish if you really had something outside of our box. It just simply isn't the case. So this is a photo of a 70 salon under construction. This one's pretty well completed from the shipyard. You can see the pilot house is wrapped up, all of the appliances have their safety protections on them for shipping. What's amazing is this is the finished product of that same salon. It really gives you an idea of how Deborah pulls together the interior of the boat, how the fabrics, the design of the settees, the furniture, the sconces. I mean, it's really amazing how we really pull these things together. And everything you see in all of these final photos were really selected with Deborah's help by the owners. So again, here's a photo of a master stateroom on a 72 enclosed sky lounge under construction. And then again, the final product. One of the things of note in here, you'll see as a fairly traditional boat, the raised paneling, the use of the burls around the berth and on the overheads. So again, this is with the help of Deborah and the rest of our team, we'll be able to create really just such a beautiful space. Again, here's another photo of a galley of the 72 under construction. And here is the final product. Now, there's some interesting things in here. In the cabinetry just underneath the stairwell, there's actually a built-in slide for some very specific appliances. In the past, we've done heavier drawer slides. We've reinforced bottoms for pots and pan storage. Believe it or not, that's one of Deborah's questions is, do we need to modify the shape of the cabinetry? Do we need to reinforce it because you're putting, pots, pans, you have heavy appliances that are going into it. This next photo is really a great example of a boat that when the owners came to us, one of the directives that Deborah was given was, I don't want anything chrome or silver inside my boat. And so as you look at this photo, every piece of hardware on the boat, I mean, just look at those, the handles on the refrigerators. You could tie the Queen Mary off to those. Every hinge, every overhead light, every appliance we spec'd out for this boat. It's all living finished products. It's absolutely beautiful. They came to us and they said, you know, in our home, we had a honed finish or a matte finish in part of it, of our galley at home. And you'll notice the center galley in here is a flat finish. It's the same stone as the countertop. So again, just something that was brought in by the owners that turned into be a really beautiful process on adding something unique. Again, this is the boat that they wanted to look like a European style boat. So again, some custom features in here is about everything you're looking at. Everything from the beech wood, the high gloss, the materials around the base of the berth, the high gloss walnut. I mean, again, just a spectacular job and an amazing job, and I think shows just great flexibility. This is the salon of an 86 Sky Lounge. You can see in this photo, the owners really wanted to have more of the homey freestanding furniture. We did a custom bar in here as well. So again, we really allowed the owner here to put their personal touches into the boat. This is the Sky Lounge portion of that particular vessel. Again, some really cool things we did in here. Most noticeable is the coffee machine that slides out of the wall. We have a second little galley up there for entertaining as well. This was an 80 motor yacht, and the owner had a lot of grandchildren, and this literally became a V-berth. Typically, we talk about the V-berth in our boats. It's a centerline queen. Literally, we made a V-berth with a filler cushion because of his grandchildren, and this was, I think, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but the only true V-berth that we've done on the bigger boats.
Yes, that's the only one that was done, and it was specifically for that client's grandchildren. Exactly right, Mike.
So this is a salon of a 610. A couple of the interesting things in here, again, the sconces. If you look at the overhead railing, it's just a nice combination of a wood with the chrome. This was a very unique table. It was a custom table that the owner found that she thought would look great in the boat, and everybody comments on it. So again, beautiful job on this particular boat. There's a settee on the starboard side. A few of her sister ships just had freestanding chairs. But again, we were there to build the boat that she wanted for her family, not for ours use. This is an interesting boat. This was a 72 Sky Lounge that we built. And this was a fairly European style interior, but not the glossy. This was a more traditional for a European style. We used things like the wangi wood. But the most interesting thing, if you look at the staircase, it's got wangi tread on it, but it has wraparounds on it to give that feeling of a floating stairway when you're standing in the galley looking back. So again, a big departure from what many of you may have seen if you're flipping through our website, but this was a very specific request, and we were happy to build it. This was on an 82 cockpit motor yacht, and this was a really simple request, but it's turned out to find its way on most of our boats. A simple floating bar on top of one of the storage cabinets up on the flybridge. So we did a granite countertop. We changed the configuration of how you access that cabinet storage and ended up giving them a great outdoor dining and entertaining area in addition to the teak tables that they have on the standard settees. This is a port guest stateroom on a 70. This is a good illustration of things like, again, the burls. You'll notice the high gloss on some of the bullnose. In particular, if you can see, the door hardware was very specific to a traditional boat. So really way down to all those little details on this particular boat as well. This was an 86 Sky Lounge as well. Again, beautiful galley. This is another boat where they did a lot of cooking on board and carried a lot of pots and pans and things. So we reinforced the bottoms of drawers. We reinforced glides on those same drawers. This table, for example, is a complete customized table. that they had built and installed here. So again, they wanted something a little bit different than what the shipyard would do, and we were certainly happy to do a complete customized table for them as well. So I think that gave you a pretty good indication of just how different we can make some of these boats. We have a lot of questions coming in from some of our attendees, so we're going to get through some of those. Let's see, a question we have from Steve for Deborah. Says, Deborah, it's clear Outer Reef makes concessions with clients and to design to their particular standards. But if a potential owner has no style you will be able to do or is a bit too assertive, what is the best way to deal with that, from the client standpoint? I think he's really asking, is there anything that really we wouldn't do even if we disagreed, I think, in a nutshell?
That we wouldn't do if we disagreed? I don't like to ever say no, but if, so again, we're always striving to accommodate the customer. We might have the conversation, what are you trying to gain out of this? What's the goal? There could be a restriction, let's say, because there's a piece of equipment or a material that's running where they want to install something. So we'll work in conjunction with the shipyard. Sometimes I'll go to Danny and say, hey, can we accomplish this? Sometimes the yard will come back saying absolutely, or perhaps they'll come back with a happy medium of a solution of sorts that the client then approves. So it's always a work in progress, but first and foremost, we don't like to say no. But if you want to do something that's really a strong departure, we might caution you from our experience, but we will still acquiesce and build it the way that you want it to be.
Yeah, and that goes into, again, we're there to build the client's version of the boat, and not your desires or thoughts as a decorator. You're really there to just translate their vision, regardless of what that vision is, into the finished product. Would you say that's accurate?
I would say that's accurate, yes.
Okay, Steve, hopefully that answers your question.
Mike, I'd like to elaborate a little bit on that if I could, because I think it's an important point.
Sure.
When I sit down with a client in a design session, probably one of the most important things we talk about, although this is the day they're getting their new boat and they're designing their dream, is we always talk exit strategy, because there's always the day you're either going to look to sell your boat, look to build a larger boat, or whatever the case may be. And having had the experience of dealing with almost 150 clients and builds, we know what the average person is looking for. So we want to lead them also in a direction that will give them a strong exit strategy from the standpoint of how long the boat will remain on the market and what is their best return on investment. I mean, as Deborah said, ultimately we will build exactly what they want, but we try to caution them and lead them in a direction that that gives them that best exit strategy available at the end of the day, which translates into the limited amount of time our boats stay on the market, because I wouldn't call them, they're not cookie cutter by any means, but they are conservative enough where they will appeal to a lot larger base of clientele looking to repurchase that boat.
Yeah, and Steve, I'm going to chime in from my experience as well on your question. There's been many times that we've had some owners come up with some things that we've thought were going to be a detriment in resale. One of them was a 65 owner who built basically a 2-stateroom, 2-head 65 with an office instead of a stateroom in there. We had a good long conversation. We expressed our concerns about it, but at the end of the day, we won't override a customer's desires to fit what we think is right. That's not what we're here for. So we're not shy about sharing our thoughts. We're not shy if we think that someone's going in a direction that may not benefit them down the road. But once we provide the clients, with some insight along those lines, ultimately it's up to our clients to build what they would like to build. I have a question from David. And David's asking that he said he and his wife are about 5 years out from purchasing, but they would like to know if they can do king size berths in the master stateroom. And the answer to that is absolutely yes. Our 5861 series can do master berths, and everything 65 feet and up comes with a master berth. So absolutely. Let's see, we have another question is from Bill. Bill's question is regarding mechanical customizations. Can you do aluminum fuel tanks? So Jeff, why don't you elaborate on that?
Well, our fuel tanks are aluminum, Mike. They're 6061 aluminum, and they are aluminum. So I hope that answers the question. We are not fans of integral tanks, fiberglass tanks, because of the inherent issues with scaling and inside of tanks. We've been fans of aluminum tanks from day one, so we think it's the best way to build.
Okay, and then Bill's follow-up question is there anything unique about the install and procedure to ensure that they maintain integrity? How do we access them for cleaning and ongoing inspections?
Yeah, all our tanks have inspection ports for cleanouts, depending on which tank it is, and depending on which vessel it is. We could have anywhere from 3 to 4 fuel tanks on board, and they all have accessible manhole covers to get in for access for cleaning. Absolutely.
Okay, so hopefully that answered your question there. We have a few more that are coming in. So we have a question from Bill. He's saying, looking at the last photo of the forward berth that had the V berth, that was on the 80. So he asked, can you assist a purchaser of a used vessel to reconfigure the layout that does not meet a purchaser's liking? Design is very personal, and chances of getting what we want is getting difficult. Deborah, I'm going to put that over to you, because we have had brokerage boats that we have sold. We've had new owners step into an Outer Reef, and they've really wanted to kind of blow their own breath of life into their own boat. And I know you've helped them on that, not just in softscapes, but I know we've done some carpentry and some things. So maybe you can share with Bill some of the boats that we've actually helped owners do some refits in.
I'm sorry, Mike, I had a little audio issue. What was the question that he had?
Okay, sure. So Bill was looking.
I can answer the question to expedite the time. I'm more than happy to answer that. Just to the time here. Yes, we will. We often will oversee refits on anybody purchasing a used Outer Reef, and if it doesn't really meet their lifestyle. For example, the 65 that you talked about earlier, where he built a 2-stateroom, 3-head boat. We oversaw the refit on that boat to bring it to a 3-stateroom, 3-head boat, which was a mandate for that client. And Deborah obviously steps in post to hardscape and does all softscape redesign. And I think you've recently just did one where we wallpapered the whole boat and new fabrics and new cushions. So yes, to answer the question, yes, we do, and we are capable of refitting any previous Outer Reef, someone looking to move up to one. Yes.
Okay. And I have a question from David on a 58 regarding a king size berth. The answer is yes, David, the 58, you can do a king size berth for certain. We have a question from Glenn, who is asking if we can use engines like MAN or MTUs instead of something like a Cat or a John Deere. Jeff, you can reply to him on that.
Yes, we can. We've occasionally over the years used different engines in the boats. Obviously, MAN's MTUs, depending on the currency exchange, sometimes it's a little bit less cost effective to switch engines. Again, we don't mind if someone has a different engine choice. We pretty much like to stay with what has no warranty claims for us. Warranty is a big issue over the years between Caterpillar and John Deere. Cummins we've used as well. They have a pretty good track records of very low maintenance and warranty issues. So we prefer to stay with something that's bulletproof, but if somebody has a preference of an engine, it's no problem.
Great. Jeff, this was a follow-up question from Bill on the fuel tanks. Have we looked at doing fiberglass tanks instead of aluminum in the past?
We have kicked it around back and forth, and every time we've done our research, the pros and cons led us back towards aluminum. We've had zero failure in all the years of building our boats with aluminum tanks. Zero failure. To me, that's a good track record. And I have a saying: "Don't fix it if it's not broke."
Right. Okay. Thank you. Let's see. We've got a couple more that are just starting to come in. Okay, no, Glenn was just simply commenting, thank you for the answer on the engines. He likes the C32s, so they're fine. We had a question, and I'm not quite certain, Glenn, and Danny, maybe you know what they are. Glenn's asking, can you do fast acting, in quotes, dogs on things like watertight doors, pilot house doors, crew doors, things like that, emergency engine room doors? Are you familiar with what those are, Danny?
Fast acting dog?
Yeah.
I'm not really familiar with that, no.
Glenn, what I would suggest, if you shoot us an email and just give us a little bit more explanation, and we'll be happy to take a look at them. I can tell you that we've had many requests over the years for various specific hardwares, and as long as we can get them and there are no major changes to use them, we're 100% open to taking suggestions and putting in various hardwares and things like that. And we've done it many times in the past. Forgive me, I'm just not certain exactly what the fast acting dogs would be. Oh, acts. Okay, so Glenn is saying, oh, it's a single lever that acts on all three latches.
Yeah, that's a simple thing we can do. We've done in the past, and I thought maybe that's what he was saying. We've done in the past where it's a single wheel in the center that activates dogs on all four sides of the doors. So yes, we can do that if it specifically wants it. Yes, because we've done that before with not necessarily a lever, but we've done it with a wheel, center wheel that activates all locking points on the door.
Okay. I think that has gotten through all of the questions that we have here. I want to thank everybody for participating and asking all the questions. They've been a set of great questions. We hope we answered them. If you need more information, you can contact any of our sales team. You can go to our website. We have a ton of information on the website. You can reach us through there. You're more than welcome to call any of our offices. If you visit our website, you'll find the recordings of some of the last seminars, as well as this one will be up in about a day or so. And there'll also be some information on some up and coming webinars, what topics that we'll cover. I do believe we'll also send you out just a quick survey on the webinars. If you would do us a favor and take a quick peek at that, we would appreciate it. But other than that, thank you, everybody. Danny, Deborah, Jeff. Great job, and thanks so much for the questions and for tuning in today.
And thank you, everyone. Enjoyed having you today.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.